Children of Dune is one of my least favorite books in the Dune series, so back when I read it, I in large part read it just to get to the next one, and it didn't get my full attention. It was only when I'd read God Emperor and loved that one that I realized how important children was. And I mean, all the books are building to book 4, and The Golden Path, which I'm going to be talking about in this video, extends even beyond that. But children is where we first hear the words the Golden Path, so I thought I would kind of go back a little bit and try to understand it from the beginning. I reread most of Children with a little bit more attention this time, and while it still isn't my favorite, I do have a new appreciation for it. Everything I talk about in this video is only information that was taken from the books, and there are some serious spoilers all the way to Dune Book 8, Sandworms of Dune. So just a fair warning. Also, this is a bit of a journey, so please bear with me. Anyway, onto the video. Let's set the scene in the immediate build-up to the discovery of the Golden Path. After Paul Atreides, the Mentat Emperor, or Muad'Dib as he was known, after his 12-year reign of spice monopoly, religious colonialism, and holy wars, he ends up going into the desert at the end of Messiah, leaving his sister Alia, who was on the religious throne, as regent of the empire. Paul and Chani's twins, Leto II and Ganima, are concerned about their aunt Alia. They've noticed that she's been possessed by her grandfather, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Now remember, a Bene Gesserit trait is that they can access other memories, but the twins think that because Alia goes into spice trances often, this is how the Baron ended up possessing her. He offered to take over her faculties when she didn't have the stomach to carry out certain unsavory tasks in her quest to hold on to power. Obviously, in return, the Baron would get to experience the living pleasures of the flesh again through Alia. The fact that she was regent and highly unstable in the chaotic aftermath of Paul's rule compelled the twins to seek guidance from their parents. So the twins go into their parents' memories and they temporarily become their parents, and they have this conversation with one another, speaking to each other as if they're both Chani and Paul. They talk of Alia's failure as a leader, and Chani mentions the Golden Path, adding that it's not a good vision, but Paul says that it's the only possible vision to come out of the chaos, for the child to bring them out of the chaos. Now remember, the twins are around 9 years old in Children of Dune, even though they are wise beyond their years. So this is the guidance that the twins get from their parents. A plan for the rebirth of humanity after the cruelty of Muad'Dib's reign, which resulted in the death of billions. They would need a new leader to usher in this rebirth. This rebirth or plan is called the Golden Path. And we get this excerpt from Leto II as he explains a dream that he had to his sister Ganima. We know that the Golden Path is Leto II's journey and his alone. In general, the idea of a golden path could symbolize a journey to peace or prosperity or enlightenment, but it's also kind of literal as well in his dream. I am on sand in bright yellow daylight, yet there is no sun. Then I realize that I am the sun. My light shines out as a golden path. When I realize this, I move out of myself. I turn, expecting to see myself as the sun, but I'm not the sun. I'm a stick figure, a child's drawing with zigzag lightning lines for eyes, stick legs and stick arms. There is a scepter in my left hand, and it's a real scepter, much more detailed in its reality than the stick figure which holds it. The scepter moves, and this terrifies me. As it moves, I feel my skin awaken, yet I know I'm still dreaming. I realize then that my skin is encased in something, an armor which moves as my skin moves. I cannot see this armor, but I feel it. My terror leaves me then, for this armor gives me the strength of 10,000 men. In carrying out this grand plan, Leto II will be transformed into something very powerful and only half human. As we know, he ends up going in search of a secret place called Jakarutu, a place long thought to be a myth. While out in the desert, he eventually transforms into half a sandworm and he gains powers. So the protective armor he spoke about in his dream, well, he did develop this sand trout outer shell on his skin, and that made him virtually indestructible. In God Emperor, we're 3,000 years into Leto II's reign of his multi-galactic empire, and his transformation has evolved. So not only was there a physical metamorphosis, he's turned into a 7-meter-long, almost immortal half sandworm, along with flippers that have replaced his human legs, but he also has great knowledge spanning time and space. He has prescience and great power. He also has monopoly over the planet's biggest hoard of spice. So even though the Bene Gesserit, the Guild, and some of the great houses have their small hoards, they still need to get their supply from Leto. And it's because of this, the fact that he has a secret store of the one thing that everyone in the universe needs to survive, this is how he's able to secure peace. It's how he keeps everybody in check as so-called allies, because they depend on him. Leto's metamorphosis was instrumental in bringing the sandworms back to Dune by turning it from from the water-rich paradise that Paul had made back into a desert. Why is this important? Well, without the desert, we don't have sandworms, and without sandworms, we don't have melange, even though Leto does have his forever stockpile. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about the new super potent melange produced in the waters of Buzzle later on in the book. As we know, Leto also had these half-dormant creatures in his skin, which would become sand trowels and eventually sandworms. So the sandworms came from Leto II himself. We also got that very, very disturbing scene at the end of God Emperor before his death, when the sand trout slithered off his skin, leaving holes. So yeah, it's through Leto II that Dune eventually becomes Dune again. This is going to be hugely important in the final book. Still though, you might be wondering, if they went from religious colonialism and jihad under Muad'Dib and then tyranny under Leto II, how exactly was humankind saved? And did there need to be a tyranny in order to do so? Surely there's more to it, because both of these leaders end up being tyrants with blood on their hands, and there is immense suffering and death during both of their reigns. We're told, though, by Leto II that somehow this features into his grand plan for the survival of humankind. Anyway, in Heretics of Dune, there's a passage that kind of poses this question as well. 10,000 years ago, since Leto II began his metamorphosis from human into sandworm of Arrakis, the historians still argue over his motives. Was he driven by the desire for a long life? He lived more than 10 times the normal span of 300 SY. But consider the price he paid. Was it the lure of power? He is called the tyrant for good reason, but what did power bring him that a human might want? Was he driven to save humankind from itself? We have only his words about the Golden Path. So I guess it's by design that we only really get more scope of the path in the final 2 books, but even then, by book 7, it's so vast that it's not really clear yet how far the path extends. How far into the future did Leto II see, and what did he set in motion to ensure that humankind survived what was to come? After Leto's death, there was a great famine for 1,500 years, and everybody spread across the universe in what was called the Scattering. Stripped of its energy and resources, the ancient government of the old empire fell away. New power groups took root and grew strong, but never again would humans allow themselves to depend on a monolithic leader or a key finite substance. Single points of failure. Some say the Scattering was Leto II's golden path, a crucible in which to strengthen the human race forever, to teach us a lesson we could not forget. This is important because history seems to be repeating itself in the Dune universe. 10,000 years before Paul Atreides, humans grew complacent and they allowed machines to think for them, and the machines eventually ruled and enslaved them. They suffered similar fates under Paul and Leto II's rule. So this lesson that Leto wanted to impart, and the sacrifice that he made in order to have humanity learn it, would also prepare them for the coming war of the machines who want to re-enslave them. In Hunters of Dune, Arrakis does end up getting destroyed again, but the question is asked whether Leto had planned to have an Atreides descendant, Cheyenne, rescue the last sand trout after its destruction. These sand trout will be bred in the No Ship, and as you'll see very soon, very important. Later in the series, when Cheyenne is looking to make Gola copies of Leto, Paul, and the original Dune characters to help them defeat the enemy, it's clear that Leto's lesson has been heeded, and the group is cautious, fearful even, because they are very aware that they might accidentally create another Kwisatz Haderach, and after 2 generations of tyranny in the Atreides dynasty, nobody wants that. They do move forward with the Golas though, and it ends up being the Leto II Gola who is instrumental in saving the protagonists and destroying the machine city of Synchrony. You see, the machines had already started their dominations, and Leto II destroyed the heart of it. He does this by releasing the now sandworms from the No Ship, and not only does he control them, but he becomes connected to them, his mind merging with the largest of them. And of course, in the sandworms is the original Leto II. So this Gola Leto properly remembers being Leto, but from something deeper than mere Gola memories. Now remember, the Fremen had always believed that Leto II, or Shai-Hulud, was in the worms? Well yeah, he did leave pearls of awareness in them. The Gola Leto II becomes this enhanced version of even the original Leto II, and he has his golden path laid out before him. His in the worms' destruction of Synchrony helps Cheyenne, Duncan, and the rest have a solid head start for the final battle, which of course Leto II foresaw. Obviously, in the end, humans recapture their universe from the thinking machines. And this wasn't the only impact of Leto's plan. Remember when the original Leto II created his own Duncan Idaho Golas repeatedly over thousands of years? Well, he unwittingly ensured that this Duncan Idaho would be positioned to be the ultimate and final Kwisatz Haderach, a new and improved version too. Though he was the ultimate Kwisatz Haderach with immeasurable power, Duncan had known the best parts of being human. life after life. He didn't need to feel alienated and worried when he could be filled with love instead. But his would not be a conventional kind of love. His love needed to extend much further to every living person and to the thinking machines. One form of sentient life was not superior to another, and Duncan Idaho was greater than the flesh that encompassed his body. Duncan Idaho, who was very much in touch with his humanity, could avoid the mistakes made by both Paul and Leto II. So much featured in this plan for humankind to finally defeat the machines in the final battle. And yeah, thus the golden path ensures the survival of humankind. And not just their survival, but the improvement of the human condition. And this is something that, through his necessary sacrifice, Leto set in motion. So the build up to the Duncan Idaho reveal was actually really, really good, and he's always been one of my favorite characters, but I didn't always understand the repeated Golas. But now that I think about it, he's the perfect character to have as a steward into this new world. So a lot of people are quite iffy about the later books in the series, Present Company not excluded. I mean, I believe that Hunters of Dune should have been one chapter in Sandworms, but I really do believe that Brian Herbert stuck the landing with Sandworms. To me, this was a really good and epic finale, and then obviously it sets the stage for us to go back into the prequel novels. Anyway, speaking of the prequel novels, I definitely am going to be working on the second book in the prequel series, and I'll probably have the video out sometime in the spring. Anyway, I hope this made sense. I had a lot of fun going through all the books again. If you have any further insights, feel free to share, and thank you for watching.